So we have to first understand what defines a youthful face. And I think if you look at a lot of people out there that have had plastic surgery, they don't look more youthful. They just look a little tighter, but they don't look more youthful, and their identity has been taken away from them. And that's a big problem. So we have to fundamentally understand youth. Now, a lot of times when I show this photograph, I get two responses from my female patients. Number one, I don't need to look 24. Well, maybe 20% say yes. But most people say, I just want to look a little bit better. But we have to understand in our society, the concept of youth and the ideal of youth is someone youthful, and that's what we consider beautiful. And a lot of times when women look back at themselves and they find what time period they thought they looked the best, it was between 28 to 32. And that's because that full face of the early to mid-20s begins to lean in a bit, but it's not quite hollow and there's not quite a sag going on just yet. So we first have to understand what is desirable. And the way that I do that is I use your old photographs. And that's fundamental, because if we don't have a blueprint for our design, we can't get closer to your identity. We take you farther from it. So let's start with this easy target at 50-some years of age and ask ourselves fundamentally from an analytical perspective why she looks good. It's easy to say she looks good. No wrinkles, not much gravity issues, but why exactly does she look good? Let's break this down for a moment. Let's start from the upper eyelid brow. Here's the thing that I want to challenge you. It is low, full, and round. If you understand what I just said in that one breath, it's the opposite of everything we're doing for the brow. Exactly the opposite. We're lifting brows, we're cutting away skin and fat, and I think in essence, we're making people look older. So plastic surgery, here's a challenge. Plastic surgery and aging does the same thing. So I want you to understand, the low, full brow is beautiful. We say, well, Doc, wait a second. My brows are pretty heavy. That's got to be, you got to take something away. Well, before I answer that question, I'm going to answer that through photographs. But right now, I want to challenge your thinking. And it may sort of be a bit elusive in your mind, but gradually in the next few photographs, I think it's going to become clear. Clearly, what we don't want is this. If the doctor would have simply looked at her photograph when she was young, look at her in her 30s. It was low, full, and round. It is now high, empty, and sculpted. Is that beautiful to you? Is it youthful? I don't think so. And it's the opposite. It's what I call a frame to the eye. There's a gorgeous, luscious frame. And if you don't believe me, go look at your textbooks. Here are the textbooks I want you to go research at home. Glamour, Allure, Vogue. Because if we start looking at plastic surgery textbooks, we're taking people farther and farther away from themselves. And I want to challenge everything you know about youthfulness and beauty and femininity and restedness. Next slide here is I want to take you to the concept of form and shape. Because what is so fundamentally important is my position is I take care of form and shape. You take care of skin and wrinkles. We work together as a team. So what I want to take a step back and look at this shaped face. What happens is the daughter on the left and the mother on the right, yes, there's extra weight as we get older. Yes, there's some gravity. But there's another change that I want you to focus on, which is an inversion of the triangle. The triangle I'm referring to, you saw in Christy Brinkley, is a heart-shaped face. That heart-shaped face inverts. Now why? Because we gain weight here, we have a little gravity in the lower face, and we also lose the volume. We flatten in our upper face. So what I want to challenge you today is to rethink everything you know. You may not have to reject everything, because I'm not a purist in my philosophy. I'm also putting everything together, and you'll see that in my photographs in a moment. So here's a reductionist philosophy that you can think about. When we're young, we're full, ripe grapes. As we get older, we become a raisin. So the question I pose to you today is, why should we take that raisin, cut, pull, stretch, lift until it becomes a pea? Because does a pea look like a grape, or does a grape look like a grape? Ask yourself, after plastic surgery, do you look like the same person? This is a major problem we're having. Here's the other thing. As estheticians, you're very focused on the details. I'm focused on the big picture, on the going back and looking at everything together. So we can work together as a team, and I want you to understand, oftentimes, I hate to say, women are their own worst critics, because the way that they evaluate the face is using an 8x, 10x magnifying mirror 2 inches away. Now why is that? Because they put makeup on. You don't want your makeup running one way or the other way. But I want you to understand, how do you see me and how do I see you? We see each other through a social encounter of maybe, say, 5 or 10 feet away, where we're just basically looking at each other at a social distance with normal, uniform overhead lights. So all my before and after photographs are rigorously controlled with just overhead lights. Not a stark light like I'm on the stage, but a uniform overhead light. I've controlled it. So think about that. If you use fill and flash photography, you're distorting reality, okay? Okay, so let's summarize. These are the 3 things I want you to focus on that right now are still a bit vague and a bit foggy. It won't be foggy in a few minutes. Volume and shape, inverting the triangle, flipping the triangle back to that heart-shaped face of youth. Highlights and shadows, creating beautiful highlights in the right places, and you're eliminating shadows in the wrong places. And finally, exactly the opposite of what you think about the eye. Put the frame back in, don't suck it out. Okay, where have we gone? You know what's exciting? No incisions. We've moved from big incisions, tiny incisions. There are no incisions. There are no bandages. There are no sutures. Patients come, now I've got a gentleman coming from Rome I'm going to work on. I've got people flying in from Hawaii and London for one day. They fly out the next morning because there's nothing to cut. There are no incisions, no bandages. So that's where we've come, right there. That's, to me, profoundly intriguing. Since we're moving to minimally invasive procedures, why don't we move to a completely non-invasive approach? So let's start with the most important thing, because if I make your jawline straight and you look exhausted, have we accomplished anything? That's a question. Tiredness. Let's get looking rested. 41-year-old model. Used to model. Now she models again. If you want to see this, look at what's going on with the eyes. Very subtle, right? You go, well, I don't see much difference, but she looks rested. She looks feminine. She looks younger. It's because I covered bone. When you cover bone of the upper face, you look youthful. You create the triangle that's there, and you frame the eye down. Look at the brow. Look at the the contour of the brow. It's been pushed down. It's the opposite of what you've been programmed to think, because we always have the 2-finger rule, right? This, oh, I look so much better. When I used to do brow lifts and do this, the patient would go, that's all fine and good, doctor, but I don't even look like myself when you do that. Is that a problem? Absolutely. I think a brow lift masculinizes the face. And when we deal with women, we feminize. I have a whole different rule and way of approaching a male patient. So look at these eyes here, Hispanic woman here. All of this is done with no incisions, not one single cut on the skin. I did take the bag out, but through a no incision approach on the skin, and all you're seeing on the upper eyelid is fat. I filled it. Take a good look at that upper eyelid sulcus, that crease. It's really high. And sometimes it goes lower, sometimes it goes higher. If the actual skin hangs over the eyelid crease, I'll take a little bit of skin, but that's it. No fat, no lifting. But that's only probably 1 out of 5. What I'm showing you today is that volume. I actually push that brow crease down over the eyelid. And what I want you to study is not the crease. It's that little bit of the sulcus, that little bit of indentation. That's bone showing through. When you cover the bone, you create convexity, you lower the brow, you create youth, period. This lady had a facelift on the left. And I want you to see that it didn't do anything. Everything you're seeing on the right side is filling with fat. The brow, the lower eyelid, the cheek, the jawline. There was not an incision made. Do I do facelifts? Yes, and I'll show you when and where. Those eyes, what would you cut? Is there anything left to cut? There is nothing there. It's skin shrink wrapped on bones. Are you going to lift her brows? Are you going to cut? Well, that's what her twin had, and the twin doesn't look rested. I filled it. Just filled it. When you fill that eye and that cheek, and you cover the bone, you create youth. You create a beautiful, soft, feminine, rested look. Brian, we can advance? So let's talk about the next concept, the form and shape.